Welcome everybody to this ordinary meeting of Huntersville Council number 4449. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and the waters that surround us, and pay my respect to their elders past and present.
We thank you, Lord, for the honour of being called by our fellow citizens to this office of honour and trust. Give us grace, diligently and honourably, free from private interest or prejudice, to discharge the duties entrusted to us, to the common good and in your sight, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Please have a seat. I just need to bring forward an item 8.1. Councillor Williams.
Mr Mayor, would you like to bring forward 8.8 first?
8.8, sorry, that's the one, is it?
Yeah, well,
Thank you. That's the one I was after.
Apologies.
Thank you. 8. Move Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Collins. All in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. It's a leave of absence for Councillors McLaughlin and Councillor Miles, and they send their apologies also. All in favour? Any discussion? That's passed. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest this evening? Move to confirmation of the minutes. Councillor Williams.
I'll move.
Seconded. Councillor.
Well, no, I'm moving what's in the report plus, in addition to, in 306.18, the resolution of the election, or 12.1. Resolution of election of the deputy mayor, that there be included in there.
Yep.
That the mayor, it was through show of hands, and that the mayor, Councillor Crassoy, Councillor Collins and Councillor Miles voted in favour of Councillor Collins, and that Councillor Sanderson and Councillor Williams voted for Councillor Williams.
All right. You'd like that added to the minutes?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Sanderson. Any discussion? Any debate? All in favour? That's agreed. Thank you. Any further matters from the minutes? Anything coming out of those minutes? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr Mayor. It relates to 13.1, which I guess is covered to some extent in the traffic report. It's probably best that I deal with it in the traffic committee section, I suppose, but it relates to the moving the bus stop.
All right. Thank you, Councillor. We'll do that at that stage. Remind me, please.
Yep.
Thank you. So I think we have a speaker this evening. Is it? Don't think it relates to a particular item, does it?
Well, it relates to the question without notice, which was the first 13.1.
All right. So we might hear the speaker, and then we'll deal with that. If everyone's in agreement. Mr. Whiters, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation. So I've got 3 minutes, I understand.
Yes, 3 minutes, please.
So first, thanks to Councillor Sanderson for tabling this issue and advising of the meeting tonight. I'm a professional engineer and resident since the early 90s, and about as small as I could best pay since the early 80s. If I could go through the timeline of this, as far as I'm aware, around 5 or 6 years ago, we attended a meeting here on this issue, beach for dinghies on the foreshore, and from that there was robust discussion, as expected from the attendees and respondees. From that, our impression was that the main driver was, as Councillor Astridge advised, to avoid dinghies being strewn around the foreshore and like coffins. Right, do you understand? Obviously the other driver is revenue. So at that meeting, the plan includes were advised, including 3 times per hour person fees. 18 months, nothing happened. 18 months ago, we had a stake in the ground at Betts Bay advising of the fee system was going to be introduced a couple of months ago. No fees and the storage racks will be installed. Thanks very much for that. So as of today, there's no racks. We've paid 2 lots of fees. So we've got a fee for no service.
Sounds familiar at the moment.
So, well, it's not expected.
No.
So, with the 2 lots of fees, I compiled an email to Jim, who was good enough to present in the minutes, and again, thanks for that. On Tuesday this week, I was contacted by council to, with an invitation to attend within 3 hours to Betts Bay to go through the situation. Within that 3 hours time, and unfortunately I wasn't able to do that because I was still full-time working. But I greatly appreciated the call, said I'd attend in the future any time that I could, and please could he set up that again. Instead I sent emails through, which you have in your system, and went through photos of Betts Bay, photos of Angelo Street, photos of Bedlam Bay racks. I queried why the Betts Bay site, which the council representative said was a difficult terrain, why it was needed, seeing there are 6 registered dinghies over the whole side of Betts Bay and the park, which are not visible from the land and very scarcely from the foreshore, so there's no coffin vision. No response. And then in the meeting, in the minutes here, I get the advice that the situation is progressing with the grant from RMS, which obviously is good. And the council representative advised me that the proposed solution of Betts Bay was to have the dinghies located on the bedrock, which they are at the minute, except for mine, which is back further in the park. They'd be elevated on a rack. The water end of the rack would be stainless tubes into concrete footings in the beach, and that'd be great. I've queried in the email how that could improve the coffin look, because it would worsen it, because they're higher. The bay is not accessible. The beach is knee deep at high tide, so you'd be a risk to get your dinghy off there. And I'll put forward the proposal further on a Bedlam Bay type rack in the flat area. You've got that in the flat area behind where my dinghy is, an 8 dinghy Bedlam Bay.
Just one moment. We've given you some extra time already, but move to extend by Councillor Sanderson and Councillor Williams. All in favour?
Appreciate that. Thank you. I'll fasten up. So it's I've recommended that. I don't understand why it's needed at Betts Bay. In the minutes, Onions Point near residents have complained, so therefore that you're not going to pursue that down there. I'm a resident. I don't see a point for Betts Bay, so I don't understand. Have any residents in Betts Park been consulted or had input? I see Lancashire Street and the other one are going to be exempt as well. In my opinion, Betts Bay falls under the same category, so I appreciate feedback on that. Are those people from the 3 sites going to be exempt from fees or pay less fees or something else, etc.? So that's the guts of it. Again, appreciate the opportunity. I'm willing to stay here longer than this extended 3 minutes, thank you, to further discuss or any other time come and input in a collaborative, constructive manner. Okay, I think that's it.
All right, thank you. If you just stay with us for a moment. Councillors, questions of Mr White? Councillor Sanderson.
Your concern is the appearance of the racks. So you'd be happy with racks if they were of suitable appearance. Is there a possible place on that site where you believe that you could construct racks of suitable appearance? And, you know, I mean, this is one of the things that came out in question without notice was, you know, there needs to be input both from the users and also from the surrounding community as to the effect on the amenity of the parks and so on.
Yeah, that's Bedlam. That's Bedlam Bay. 3 lots of those racks are at Bedlam Bay, 8 dinghies each. In my opinion, if it was needed for the 6 registered dinghies at Betts Bay to, in fact, proceed down this track, despite the 3 other sites being exempt, that Bedlam Bay rack type would be perfect. It would be cheaper than individual rack on the top of bedrock for the 6 dinghies at Betts. Cheaper to fabricate, cheaper to install, of longer life, and obviously better visual. That's the location there. As you go down, this is looking from the water back up the track at Betts Bay. So you can see that flat area just on the right behind our dinghy. I've measured it out during inspections. It's long enough, wide enough to take that rack Bedlam Bay. The only issue is the little rails. The 2 little fence rails need to be removed, obviously, to avoid a trip hazard.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Councillor Williams?
I'm sorry to ask this question, but I'm just trying to get a handle on exactly what you're after for this location. Are you after a rack or not a rack, or
Not a
any
rack.
particular?
Not a rack. In my opinion, this location is exactly equivalent to Valencia and Alexandria in the fact that, as the council representative advised, it's difficult terrain. There's no visual impact from land or water, and no need for 6 dinghies. It's a complete overkill, and I don't understand what the difference is to Betts Park and Valencia and Alexandria and Onions Point, where residents don't like it.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Lee, of the staff?
Councillor Williams, yeah.
Why aren't those locations exempt? One was referred to by the speaker.
Alexandra Bay was one.
Sorry?
Alexandra Bay was one of the ones you mentioned, wasn't it?
Valencia and Alexandria.
Yeah.
Why
Plus
don't,
Onions, because residents complain.
I think we might have to take this on notice, and I think we might have to go and have a look at the site to just understand it a bit better and understand the issues you've raised. Would that be acceptable to you if we,
Of course.
and perhaps we give you a bit more notice this time?
Oh, of course. Druba's got all these photos on his system.
Yeah. Mr. Creeper suggested he'd meet you on site with Druba
Sure.
and see if we can resolve the matter with you.
Yeah, greatly appreciate it.
Is that okay? Councillor Williams, is that
yeah,
acceptable?
sounds good.
Councillor Crasso?
I do just have one more question. So you'd like it left as it is, with the boats just kind of scattered where they go, because you don't want the dinghies to have to be registered, or just because you just like it left like it is?
Despite the fact that we've had a dinghy there since the early 80s, and the fact that we're uncertain why the registration revenue needs to be instigated, let's put that aside. Happy to pay along with other dinghy owners in the residence. Not certain why the nearly 3-time factor is on non-residents. In my opinion, that's not cricket. Happy to pay that. The payment is not the issue. It's the complete unnecessity of the whole thing, with the terrain at Betts Park, the lack of vision from land and water for 6 dinghies, as compared to Valencia, Alexandria and Onions, who don't like it. So is Angelo going to wake up tomorrow morning and not like it? And all the dinghies there and the racks dismantled? Is Bedlam Bay going to wake up and not like it? Where's it going to start and stop with Onions not liking it?
Okay. Mr. Whiters, I think you've given us some pause for thought. Mr. Karipis is happy to meet with you and we'll look at it further.
Sure, and at least one other dinghy and yacht owner in the bay since the 80s that can contribute as well.
Okay. Welcome to come along.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Sir, at the back there, you here on the same issue?
Yes, had a read through.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Okay, thanks for allowing me to bring that forward. I thought we'd deal with that. We can still deal with it later and have another chat about it later if you like. But the thing that I need to deal with at the moment is a message of condolence for Mr. Bruce Edelman. I remember Mr. Edelman a year ago at the pre-poll, and he was very unwell a year ago. He must have had a very tough year. He passed away on Sunday morning, October 7th, following an illness that's been there for quite a while. He was a long-time member of the Hunters Hill community, having a big impact on the welfare of the area. Dr. Edelman was an elected alderman of the municipality for a period of 11 years from 1980 until 1991. He served as Mayor of Hunters Hill during 1985, 1986 and 1987, and Deputy Mayor from 1983 to 1985. Mr. Edelman was instrumental in the formation of the Hunters Hill State Emergency Services 34 years ago. What a contribution that's been too. The origin of the present unit lies in a search for an elderly man who went missing from a nursing home in 1984, and the Mayor at that time, Dr. Edelman, was asked why Hunters Hill was not involved in the search. Dr. Edelman enlisted a former Army colleague, the late Ken Isles, Emeritus Mayor Sue Hoopman, local residents Duccio Coquio, Mark Pittaway to help form the Hunters Hill unit. He served as Deputy Controller and after became the local controller, a position he held until he retired in 2008. Quite a service. From small beginnings in a garage behind the Henley Cottage and a small utility vehicle, the unit now occupies Building 26 of the Gladesville Hospital, with the latest equipment and more than 40 active members. In conclusion, Dr. Edelman was an oral surgeon and always offered his services at Christmas, public holidays and on weekends at St Vincent's Hospital, attending to trauma and accident situations. He served in the Army Reserve and was a staunch supporter of the municipality of Hunters Hill. He will be remembered for his impressive contribution to St Vincent's Hospital, his many years as SES controller, and by the community of Hunters Hill. Dr. Edelman, OAM, will be greatly missed by his wife Christine, daughter Sally, and granddaughter Isla, and many friends and members of the municipality. This is a man that's made a great contribution to our municipality. The recommendation there is on page 2. Move Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Williams, would you like to speak on this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Dr. Edelman served on council in my first term on council, and it was his last term. And Bruce was a dedicated person to this community. He also had an outstanding career as an oral surgeon. But as you pointed out, one of the highlights of his service in Hunters Hill was the SES and the development and creation of the unit that now stands proudly amongst the whole SES community as being a very active and very supporting group to the issues that SES deal with. Bruce, or Dr. Edelman, and I used to have a bit of banter across the table in those days. I can recall him constantly correcting my poor upbringing, my grammar, which I thanked him for on many occasions. But he was an effective councillor, or in those days alderman, an effective mayor and deputy mayor, and I think the whole community is going to miss his contribution and his leadership. And he was very persistent. Once he got that nucleus for an SES team, I was mayor at the time, and he constantly requested facilities and resources to make that a viable unit. And council offered that cottage at Henley, and also not cottage, garage, and also a vehicle, which set the whole thing in motion. And as your mayoral minute points out, what we have today would not be in place without his dedication and effort. And I think from a personal point of view, he was a gentleman, a person that was committed to his family and local community, and he will be missed.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion on this? I also saw him as a great man and admire his contribution to the community. Recommendation is on page 2. Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Sanderson. All in favour? That's carried. Thank you. 4.1. Next item we're dealing with is 4.1, development applications determined under delegated authority. Councillor Williams?
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Crasso. Councillor Williams.
I have a few questions. The first item, the second item is 20181038. It refers to a new earth-covered boat shed. Is that correct?
Yes,
Is there such a thing?
it's hard to explain. It's no need
to explain. I just wondered whether
Is it correct?
It's correct. It is correct. It's
As opposed to a water-covered boat shed.
it's a boat shed that's in the ground underneath, and it's on a hard to explain. It's there at the moment. They're just fine tuning it, and a small addition to it.
Okay.
It's got a patio thing on top of it, so it's not a traditional boat shed on the water. It's off the cliff, and they can get access to it through a barge.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That's enough. The other thing is that I find with these reports, there's a constant removal of trees. Very little explanation. I've got no idea why these trees are going, but it seems to be something that's rarely rejected. And we have spoken before about the loss of tree canopy in our municipality, and I would like more information on those items so that I can understand the reasoning behind it. Sometimes there's good reasons, but other times it may be just a subjective thing. So I'd just like to get a better feel for the rationale. And I noticed here that where there is a bit of information that it's not like for like. We've got trees coming out and shrubs going in, which I would think needs to be considered. And that's why we need to get on and get this, what I would call, I think we've given it a name, the new Parks and Trees and Bushland Group. But I've got some really good ideas which actually came to me while we were at the conference last week, and I'll get them down on paper so that we can discuss them in the near future, because we need to get on with that, but it needs to be thought through and consulted with the various players. So I would just again appeal to council to provide enough information in these reports for me personally to be able to make a judgment as to the merits of those decisions.
Thank you, Councillor. That was the other item I was thinking of earlier. You were going to work with Councillor Miles on that, I believe.
Yeah, he's been away, but I've got some thoughts. Yeah, but I'll bring paper to the workshop, because I think it comes down to a landscape concept, and there's elements within that landscape concept that we need expertise and advice on. Anyway, I'll provide.
Thank you. I look forward to getting it back up and running again. I know there are a couple of members of the community quite interested in that committee. Councillor Crasso.
Just a question, if I may,
yes.
through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff, not sure. When it says approve removal of 2 trees with the planting of 1 replacement tree, in the actual approval document, does it say the size of the replacement tree? Like, does it say what it has to be, and is there a time frame that they have to keep it alive? And
that's correct, through the conditions, and I'm thinking of putting that in the report from now on in. The type of species, there's numerous types of species, leaderage, and I'll be adding those to this report.
And do we follow up, like, to see a year later if they've done it and if it's alive? I'm just curious.
In certain cases, the applicant, they do that anyway, but in certain other cases, we have the adjoining owners or somebody that drives past, or our tree persons that pick things up. We don't have a detailed schedule, but we do through other means.
Councillor Williams.
I'd like to ask, along that vein, if because Latin names for species and whatever, it's hard to visualise what the result's going to be. If a dimension or expected dimension could be put on it, so you can sort of see whether it is a shrub going in for a tree or whatever. At the moment, it's very hard to correlate what's coming out and what's going in. And I do agree with Councillor Crassoy that if we're going to have conditions like this, and it does have such a significant impact on our streetscape and our landscape, then we should have some follow-up in relation to it. Other councils do. Actually, it was interesting at the conference, some councillors were saying that they have a program that when they plant street trees, they actually go and water them for a period to make sure that they survive. So that should happen in private property as well, that there's an obligation and requirement and supervision or oversight to make sure that the intent is carried through.
Good suggestion. Any further discussion, councillors? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. 4.2, development application determined by the Development Control Unit. Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Crassoy. Any discussion on this?
I could say the same, but
No previous comments?
no.
Very good, thank you. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. 4.3 is a report on legal matters. Councillor Williams.
Can I ask? Oh, sorry.
Seconded. Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Williams.
I was going to ask a question, but I'm happy to move it. That's all right. Mr. Mayor, I was just wondering the important issue of recovering our legal costs from the merger process. I noticed it forms several items within this, and particularly on page 14 and 15. So I'm just wondering, it's taking a very long time to resolve this issue, and it looks like there's offers and counter offers. Are we going to get to a resolution on this? And if so, is there any timeline associated with it? Because it's very clear from where I'm standing that 12 months ago, courts, the Supreme Court, determined that the government should pay costs.
All costs.
Sorry?
All costs.
That's correct. And government is supposed to be the model litigant, and as such, should honour the court's judgment. And at the moment, 12 months later, we still appear to be no closer to getting resolution. And the government, through its Crown solicitors, seem to be finding reasons why not to proceed rather than seeking an outcome. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm very concerned at the attitude of the government in dealing with this matter, and it should be simple. The courts were very clear, and council has a right to be paid those legal fees. And government has billions of dollars for freeways, but doesn't seem to have a couple of $100,000 to honour its legal obligations for us.
Thank you, Councillor Williams, and I'll refer your question, if I might, to the General Manager, Lisa Miss Campbell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the facts are that there were cost orders given in council's favour. There are 3 councils that are part of that order. At the time of writing this report, a response was being drafted. That response has been given back to our solicitors, and I believe that that they're awaiting one more response from another council to provide that feedback back to the state. But the facts are that the state are required to pay the 3 councils' court costs.
As well.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Councillor? Not the bit about why they haven't paid, but does that tell you about the progress?
When they might pay, but I can appreciate that is in their hands, not certainly in ours. So thank you for your response.
Thank you, councillor. Any further comments? Any questions? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. 6.1 is the community representative floodplain risk management. I must say, I'm surprised that we've got a floodplain considering we sit on top of a ridge, but I do understand that some properties do flood. So councillor Williams, seconded councillor Sanderson. Councillor Williams.
Yes, I acknowledge those comments that you just made, and I think we talked about that at the time we were required to have a very expensive consultancy to determine our flood risk. But here we are, we've got a committee, and I know personally it's Dr. Lees, actually. He's a very well-renowned flood engineer and somebody that's worked in the water industry for many years. So, Bridget Dorset is also a very valuable member of the community to join that committee. So I think we're exceptionally well served, as we always are with our committees, with community representation. And there seems to be the never-ending plethora of government agencies coming along. So I look forward to the opportunity to work through those issues and bring back to council some clarity as to what's needed in Huntersville around stormwater issues.
Thank you, councillor. Any further discussion on this matter? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. 8.1, I think, is our next item, and it's proposed presentation of the 17-18 financial reports. Reporting officer May. Thank you, May. Would you like to speak to this at all, May, or briefly?
Yeah, we just do a proposed for the final report that we have received from the audits. So I just want to make a proposal for the 12th November to get the auditors out to do a presentation to the councillors.
Okay. Question? Councillor, moved Councillor Crassoy, seconded Councillor Collins. Any further discussion on this? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Just bear with me. 8.2 is a summary of council investments as at the 30th of September. Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Collins. Discussion, Councillor Williams.
Oh, no, just a comment, Mr. Mayor, and I think I've made it before. I appreciate the simplicity of this report, but things don't change much from month to month or year to year in relation to the revenue we get from these investments or income we get from these investments. I just, again, ask council to think of ways that we might be able to get better return on the cash that we have invested at the moment, because it just doesn't change much. I think we might be able to do better. I'm hoping.
Thank you. I think we'd all like to do a little bit better. Maybe it's an opportunity to workshop this a bit further and see how we might generate some income with using that money in a different way. I think Councillor Collins has spoken about that. Councillor Miles has spoken about that in the past. And I've certainly been front of mind for me for 6 years, however long it's been. All right, any further discussion on this? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. 8.3, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that the matter be deferred to the next council meeting.
Okay. Is there a reason for that?
Yes, very much so. If I get a second.
Seconded, Councillor Sanderson. Would you like to share your thoughts?
Mr. Mayor, this is a very significant policy issue and something that does change how council operates. And at the moment, we have 2 councillors on leave, and I think for such a significant policy issue that we need to have their input or have an opportunity to have an input into this decision. So I propose that it be deferred until we can have a full quorum of councillors and the appropriate debate that can follow that.
Okay. Any questions? Any further comments? Anybody wish to speak against that?
Yeah, I'll speak against the amendment. We do have a quorum here. I think we should, even though it's unfortunate that not everyone's here, we should still have this debate.
Okay. 4.
I just have a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to
Yes.
the GM. If we defer, is it going to throw everything? Is it going to make your timeline too difficult to get the dates confirmed in time for the end of year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what it will mean is that we will, the report's recommitted to the 12th of November meeting. It will mean that assuming council proceeds, that the exhibition period will run till February, and then we'll bring a meeting to bring a report, to the first meeting in February. And then depending on the outcome of that, the change, if we were to move to one meeting a month, would commence then in March. So it's not an issue. Sorry, thanks, Councillor Crasso. We can work within that if that's what the council decides tonight.
So it just pushes it back
It does push it back, yes.
3 meetings.
Yes.
By deferring at one meeting, we push the implementation back 3 meetings in several months.
To March, yes, Councillor Crasso.
Thank you.
Who'd like to speak for? Councillor Sanderson?
Yes, I agree with Councillor Williams. There are some pretty significant changes in this proposal. There's discussion about LPPs and things which I question. I mean, we've been misled by the Department of Planning before. I take particular notice, the late notice that we got about the general manager, the former general manager, being able to appoint the community members of the LPP when he didn't have delegation. And there was a lot of work involved by Councillor Williams and myself into contributing to save the situation, given the excellent result we have today. I'm a bit concerned about a number of the aspects of this. Traditionally, we've always had council meetings at 7:30 in the evening, and I'm not too sure about the wording about the no meeting in January. I mean, we had an instance last year. We ended up with an extraordinary meeting on the 1st of February. It would have been preferable if it had been a bit earlier, so I wouldn't want to be excluding that. So I see a lot of difficulties with this. I'd rather get it right before it goes out for community consultation. Thank you.
Okay, against? 4. I think we can always schedule an extraordinary meeting at any time. It wouldn't have meant we couldn't have had that meeting, the extraordinary meeting. You can always still do that. And I think that's considered in here. I'm of a mind to defer it so we can have all councillors here support you, Councillor Williams. I'm of a mind to defer it just because it is an important issue. There are a few things, and I think Councillor Miles and Councillor McLaughlin would like to have a say on it. So my view is that I'm with you, and I'd support deferring it. So any further discussion needed on this? I would like to say I'd like to get it passed tonight so we can start our program from January. But I also think I'd like to have some extra opinions and debate on it. So I'll put the motion, Councillor Williams' motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you, Councillor Williams. 8.4, Deputy Mayor representation on external organisations. Councillor Williams.
I recommend that we defer this on the same basis. It is a significant council issue, and we have 2 councillors not able to contribute to the debate. So I believe it needs to be deferred to the next meeting.
Have a seconder for that? Councillor Sanderson. So speak for.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. As with the previous item, this is a significant change to council's policy. In the past, it's been a merit-based process. The best person available is given the role. I see nothing in the report that helps us understand why it just needs to be the Deputy Mayor, because my understanding of the role of the Deputy Mayor is that they only have the powers of the Mayor, or the powers to act on Council's behalf, when the Mayor is absent. And that's not only just absent from the meeting, but absent in a formal sense. So I personally don't see there being much merit in this process, but it is a significant policy issue, and as such, again, I believe we need to have the full council present to be able to debate it.
Who'd like to speak against? Councillor Collins.
Perhaps we should just all go home if we're not going to do anything tonight. I think we are quite able to debate this motion tonight, and I look forward to doing so. If we're just going to defer everything that's important, we shouldn't be here.
So would you like to speak why you feel we should do this tonight, apart from that?
Well,
Why you support this?
well, I mean, this has just been accustomed to rotate these things every year. Now we're just tying it in. Suggestion is to tie it in with the change of Deputy Mayor, which was Councillor Williams last year. It's me this year. Next year it'll be any one of these four that haven't done it this term, and we subsequently just rotate those positions. It's pretty straightforward to me. I don't think this is a major policy change. It can always be changed at a later stage. So it's pretty cut and dry to me.
All right. So any further discussion on the motion to defer? Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, I speak in favour of Councillor Williams' motion. I agree with Councillor Williams that should be the best person available to do any particular job. The other issue is we've had problems with alternates on different committees at different stages, and I think this includes alternates, if it's the correct motion, as an ESROC delegate. And I think it'd be good for both Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Miles to be available, so that we can work out precisely who all the delegates on ESROC will be at that time. So I'm certainly in favour of deferring this matter.
All right. Anybody else wanting to speak against the deferral? I don't think we should defer it. I think we should get on with it and deal with this tonight. I think we should put in place what has been in place. The Deputy Mayor has taken up the role in the past. I think it's something we should have considered when we had the vote for Deputy Mayor, and I think it's something we need to do in the future. When we vote in the Deputy Mayor, that's what we've done in the past. So we've considered the Deputy Mayor can choose not to do the position and offer it to another candidate if they don't want the position. There's always that possibility, but I think we should deal with it tonight. So I'll put the motion to defer, and we'll see.
Right of reply, Mr.
Right of reply, certainly. Thank you.
I don't know how long your history is, but it hasn't been the policy of council, the tradition of council, to rotate the Deputy Mayor's position. There's always been, in my experience, obviously in recent times, the last couple of years or the last council term, a bizarre concept of sharing a very important position, a position that should be one on merit, not one on it's my turn. I think the Huntersville community expect the Deputy Mayor's role, as it does with the Mayor, to be one that has a position of honour, a position that is respected. If it's just a casual rotation, none of those conditions apply. And as far as I'm concerned, you need to look back to the tradition of this council over the last 154 years, not the last 5 years. And in my experience, it has always been an elected role based on merit, not on a casual sharing arrangement. And I think the community expect that. And I would like to hear the other councillors' views on that at the same time. We're making significant decisions that set the agenda into the future without the council being here. It's not a trivial matter. It's not something that has to be done tonight. It's something that does require careful consideration by all the councillors. So I do believe it needs to be deferred to the next meeting.
All right. I'll put the motion to defer. Those in favour? Against? That's defeated. So we come back to the motion that's on the table. To have a mover for the motion, Councillor Collins. To have a seconder for the motion, Councillor Crasso. Councillor Collins.
Well, look, I think I've mostly covered it. I think the idea is to rotate this and tie it in with being the deputy mayor, and I think it's a good policy, and I support it. Yeah. And it's not, and I didn't say it's a trivial matter. It's just something that is currently the way it's done. Maybe it hasn't been 20 years ago or 50 years ago, but it is recently, and I think it's been working well. So let's continue with the current way.
Will you speak against the motion? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Clearly I'm outnumbered tonight. However, sharing something is a trivial matter. Merit-based selection is an important matter. And just because councillors want to make a decision to share things, they need to take into consideration what the community might think. We don't select a general manager just out of a hat, we select the person on merit. The community selects the mayor on merit, staff are selected on merit, councillors are selected on merit. It is not a casual issue, it is an important issue. And I think there needs to be that respect given to the role of Deputy Mayor. As I say, I appear to be outnumbered on that view tonight, but I'm sure if there are other councillors here, it might be a different outcome. So I do urge council to let other councillors who aren't here have an opportunity to discuss and have an input to this.
Anybody wishing to speak against? For rather, so excuse me.
Before I
Councillor
do,
Crasso.
I have to ask a question, and you might not be able to answer it. And I think in the crusty recesses of my brain, I recall that when we formed as a council and we were looking at the different committees that councillors could represent on, I recall, and someone might be able to help me, in that document when it listed those committees, I'm fairly certain that it said the mayor and the deputy mayor as alternate in that document. But I can't quite remember. But I do recall at the time thinking that at the time that it was going to be the mayor and Councillor Williams because the second person is the mayor's alternate. And at the time I was a spare councillor on that.
I don't recall, but I don't think we had a lot of debate about it at the time.
No.
I think
we didn't really.
Councillor Williams said he would like to be on it and we put him on it. I don't think we had any debate on it that I can recall, but I might be wrong about that. And unfortunately we don't have any recordings that we can go back and review, but it has been the practice in recent years to roll that role. If the Deputy Mayor didn't want to take on the role, it was then passed on to somebody else. That has been the way it's been handled in recent years. I acknowledge what Councillor Williams saying. It's important to consider the merit of the candidates, but I think what we have in Councillor Collins is somebody with a financial background. I think that's something which is really important in Nesrock, and I think that'll provide something to Nesrock, if I might just take that. I think when it comes to Civic Risk Mutual, I'm sure there'll be things at Civic Risk Mutual which will bring clarity to if I'm not available, and I'm sure he probably is better at that than I am. It's a particularly financial based committee and board, so I think he would bring a lot to that committee too. So I don't have any concerns about Councillor Collins' credentials for either of those boards.
I would like to speak for the motion if I can.
Councillor Crasso.
Thank you. I wholeheartedly agree with rolling over our roles on any committee if anyone wished to do so. We are elected on our merit. All of our residents elected us on our merit to do our job on their behalf. As far as capacity to do a job goes, I think the person who we elect to be our deputy mayor as a council, we must elect them because we think that they have the capacity to do the role of deputy mayor, that is to represent the mayor and to represent us councillors. And in this instance, it happens to be Councillor Collins, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about changing this so that the deputy mayor does those important positions and represents our council as an alternate to the mayor. I think it's very important, and I embrace the opportunity for us to share that diversity and that upskilling to make us all better councillors and better at the job that we do when we're working alongside other councils. So I think it's very important that the deputy mayor does do that role, and that's the privilege that comes with the role of being the deputy mayor.
All right, thank you. Would you like to speak against? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a remaining concern with the motion. As I mentioned, the positions of alternates for NESROC. I wasn't an alternate in the last year, although I did attend NESROC on a couple of occasions.
Yes,
on one occasion, I think we had to pass a special resolution to make me a delegate, so I could vote. So, look, if we're not going to defer the whole matter, I think it's probably important that we defer the selection of the alternates, and then that way, if Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Miles wish to nominate for that, I would also be interested, but I would really prefer that we just deferred the whole lot.
Thank you. I don't think we have to nominate the two other councillors this evening. I think we can leave that for the moment. It's just saying two other councillors, and we can do that when they return if they wish to be on it. Councillor Collins, would you like to write a reply on this?
Well, yeah, look, I think Councillor Crassoy has summed it up quite well. And I thank you for your comments. I think I do believe I was elected on merit, and I do think I am very capable of performing these roles. And I don't think that, in general, if this has become a discussion more about the role of deputy mayor than these these positions, I don't think that rotating the role in any way diminishes the role, and I think it is important for all councillors to to get involved at all levels, and there is a bit of upskilling in it and bringing different things. So I think it's a very worthwhile outcome.
Thank you. Any further clarifications? Any further comments? So I'll put the motion, the recommendation, which is on page 142. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Division? Would like to have your names there?
Yes,
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
So declined, Councillor Williams, Councillor Sanderson. 8.5, NESROC Code of Conduct Review Panel.
Move the recommendation.
Move Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Collins. Any discussion on this? I'll put the recommendation on 146. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Right, so page 152, 8.6. Proposed Council Christmas New Year's hours of operation. Now, this has been the same for the last few years, and if you'll note, there's an extra day in there. So, move Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Crassoy. Any discussion on this matter? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. 8.7 is a monthly report on outstanding matters. Councillor Williams.
I'll move.
Moved and seconded Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I recall in relation to the first item here, which is the strategic strategic direction for Gladesville, there was a possibility of state funding to assist in that process. I was wondering whether council's pursued that at all.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we will be pursuing it, Councillor Williams.
I think Councillor Miles referred to the possibility that the Minister for Planning might be able to provide some additional resources for us in that regard. The second item, which is 3 Hillcrest Street, Gladesville, I'm happy to share it with council, but a resident there has provided me with a video during the most recent storm, which shows the deluge that goes through his property and down through the neighbouring property. And this matter has been unresolved now for the 12 months I've been on council. I think I raised it very early in the council term. And I know it's a long-standing issue well before this council. So I'm happy to share the video because I think it's very instructive as to the impact which this drainage alignment or the drainage capacity at that location is, and maybe that can give a bit of insight to staff to be able to move the issue forward a little bit.
So it's runoff, is it? Is the issue?
Yes, it's street runoff. Rain falls on the street from a long way, it all aggregates down to a point and then it has to run through stormwater drains to get away. Trouble is, it doesn't go through the drains, it goes through 2 properties.
Right. I have a similar problem in my property. I only just found out about it.
Right. Well, you might like to put it on the list.
Yeah.
As well.
So we've got a mover and a seconder.
I've got a number of questions that I could Mr.
Questions, yes, please.
In relation to Bonifant Road, I noticed there was a letter sent to residents on the 22nd of this month. Could a copy of that be sent to councillors, please?
I think it did come to us.
Did it? Okay, all right. I stand to be corrected.
Make sure. It came to me. We'll check to make sure it came to you.
All right, I stand to be corrected on that one.
Councillor, sorry, not a councillor. Mr. Creeper said he'll send it to us all again.
All right, that's good. Thank you. I've been busy with other matters, you would know,
I
so I might have missed that one. My apologies.
Yeah,
the next one is on the question without notice 13.3 to do with 10 Milling Street. Over in the progress report says this matter has been resolved. How has that been resolved?
Sorry, which one are you looking at again, please?
On page 160.
Yep.
The second item from the bottom.
Thanks.
I wonder what through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could ask how that matter has been resolved.
Through you, Mayor, a question came up from the applicants and then the adjoining owners, and the adjoining owners' lawyer put a letter to council questioning the approval. Then our lawyers responded accordingly, and that information was sent to all councils. I can redistribute again, and the matter has been ended or closed or explained, and nothing's come from that from about a month now.
Okay, good, thank you. I think there was one other. Oh yes, the other one I did notice is that Prince Edward Street is completely missing off this outstanding.
I thought I saw that somewhere. No, I think it's there somewhere. Maybe it's find it somewhere else. It's about closing the road, is that what we're talking about?
That's the one.
No, I did see it.
There's a study.
Let's have a quick look. There's something in this somewhere. I may have seen it in one of the committees. Sorry, thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Williams.
Have an indulgence of one more.
Yes, please.
Again, it relates back to when I first got on council, and it's item 3.1 on the first page, 155. It's 305.17. That again has taken a long time to progress, but it's fundamental council business as to how we structure and manage our projects within the organisation and the basis for which we communicate with our residents. So I'm just wondering if the new general manager would have an opportunity to have a close look at that, because I think the way we conduct our projects, the systems we have in place, the lessons we learn from our experience are quite important, are essential to good outcomes for the council. So I would request that matter at some stage be considered and progress. And I might add a note to that. In another role I have as the Council on the Australian Institute of Project Management, I'm leading a community practice for local government practitioners on behalf of the institution. And we've been having a series of meetings with local government project managers. The last one was last week at Rye. We had over 30 councillors attend. So it might be useful if we had anybody in our team that was a official project manager or dealt with projects. The Community Practice Project is all about sharing experience and collective learning. And we're into our third meeting now, and the councils are now taking over the process and going to run it themselves. But more importantly, there was an exceptional amount of debate around tools and systems at the last meeting, which I think this council could benefit from. But anyway, I'm just saying
No, I think it is
that
good.
project management to me is very important.
It is.
There are mechanisms within local government to advance project management, but I'd like to see our council make sure that we've got all the blocks in place.
Thank you. Would you like to make a brief comment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's certainly something that we'll be looking at in terms of our systems and processes going forward, and also as we look at our organisational structure.
Thank you. Would you like to make a comment, Councillor Collins?
Yeah, just one thing about the well, it's also item 3.1 on 162, which is the look at the fig tree part with the property committee. I just wanted to get an update on where the property committee is. Is that something we can expect to come to the next meeting?
Yes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's something I'd like to discuss further with the councillors and then bring back a proposal for consideration.
Mm-hmm. So when would that be?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, intending by the end of the year.
Councillor Cresswell.
Also just a comment on the Bonifan Road, item 7.1, on page 157 in A and then in section 3 A as well. It talks about council, that the remaining area of the road becomes staggered parking, and that council prepare a proposal for the remaining 2 zones for staggered parking.
Sorry, go ahead.
So at the 2 meetings that we held about that, several residents were opposed to staggered parking, and we just explored the idea of trialling it. So it's more just in the wording. I'm sure that's the intention, that it was actually to just trial staggered parking at the eastern end. I thought was the case, but I could go back to that.
Mr. Rivers?
You're correct, through you, Mayor, and as I'll distribute the minutes of that meeting, and that will be clarified in those minutes as well, which have been distributed to all the residents in the street, not only the ones that attend, but the ones that weren't there as well.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. 8.8 we dealt with earlier. 9.1 is the minutes of the Conservation Advisory Panel, 19th of September. Councillor Williams?
Mr Mayor, as chair of that panel, one of the few remaining roles I have, I would like to add to this because I think Mr Karupis would acknowledge that it's not included in the minutes, but there was considerable discussion about the St Joseph's College proposal and the time frame that we have to respond to that proposal. So I think that needs to be added to the minutes. What?
Was that an item on the agenda?
That's on the,
It wasn't an official item, but it was.
it's on the other minutes that haven't come out yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Right.
it should be reflected anyway, but you can add to it.
No, that's okay. It's just that I'm very mindful of the very short time frame there is for council to put a constructive response back to the Department of Planning and Environment on this very important issue.
What date is that, Councillor?
I think it's the 16th of November. It's
Yeah,
only
correct.
2 weeks.
Through you, Mayor, there's because of the tight timeframes, and Councillor Williams is correct, and it was discussed at Conservation Advisory Panel. There's going to be a two-tier approach to submission. First tier would be highlighting the main issues of streetscape heritage and the like, but also asking questions and clarifications with regard to more detailed information, such as detailed heritage report, a detailed traffic report, and a possibly height poles and some sort of delineation in relation to where the item will be. And then our second tier submission will be formed part of our Conservation Advisory Panel with our panel of experts. Be part of our second submission, but in our first submission we'll also be asking for an extension of time because the time frame is very tight, and that's the approach.
Yeah. This is an important issue, and that was reflected in the discussion at the Conservation Advisory Panel. Did we provide a formal response to the college when they had their community consultation process? I don't recall.
I think
They came in here and spoke to us. They came and spoke to the Conservation Advisory.
I think we did from memory.
If we did, I would appreciate a copy of that, and maybe that could be circulated to the Conservation Advisory Panel members as well.
So can I just check, Councillor, so this meeting is a meeting of September 19. It was discussed in this meeting.
No,
it was a different meeting.
The October one.
In the October meeting, okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. No, that's okay. I was
I'm ahead of myself.
trying to make some sense of myself. Thank you.
I was assuming that's what the minutes from that meeting. But anyway.
Right, so they'll come up in the next one.
Yeah, but it'll be too late at that point.
So what's our next step?
Our next step,
Please, just clarify.
our next step is a letter to the Department of Planning, raising issues of impact, bulk and scar, but also asking for clarification on certain reports and some high poles. And then the second part of that would be CAP Advisory Panel commentary on the significance of the heritage, and that'll be our second submission. All those submissions will be distributed to the council halls as well.
Right.
I have my internal team, our planners and our heritage advisors and myself are preparing the internal report at this stage.
Thank you, Mr.
The General Manager just told me to bring a report to the next council meeting setting out the process. Might be too late, but it'll be clarified in that.
Mr. Mayor, this probably won't get favoured, but I see this as probably one of the most critical planning issues in Hunters Hill at the moment, apart from the Gladesville precinct. And I think we owe it to the community to make our submission to the Planning Authority in a very thorough and timely fashion. And I don't see there being a lot of benefit in putting in a late submission. So I'd even go as far as to say we may need an extraordinary meeting or some process to advance or to agree on what the staff are putting forward. It is a 4.5-storey building of a hangar or industrial scale building, right on the boundary, overshadowing neighbours, prominent all over Hunters Hill, and is in the conservation area, and will set a significant
expectation on those that want to do similar things. So to me, this is fundamental to our planning processes and the objectives we're trying to achieve through those planning processes. So leaving it to beyond that point, I'm the point that the submission's closed, I'm not terribly comfortable with.
All right.
I would suggest we need to have an extraordinary meeting to deal with the matter because it's so significant.
Thank you, councillor. Would you like to consider that with Mr. Grievous? Right. All right, just share that, please.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, the submissions on the St Joseph's proposal is due on Friday the 16th of November. Our next council meeting is Monday the 12th of November. We have the ability to bring a report to the 12th of November, which could then be, depending on the debate and items that may or may not already be canvassed in that submission, it could be then amended prior to submission on the Friday. So, councillors, what I'm suggesting is if we bring a report back to Monday the 12th of November, there is still 4 days after that to refine that submission ahead of the due date.
That'd be excellent. I was under the impression that you weren't able to get it to the closing date, but if you can, that'd be wonderful. And if we can consider it at that meeting, I think it would be very
Confusion was capital.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've just got one further question relating to that. Would it be possible, if that report happens to be prepared a little bit earlier, that it be made available to councillors? I know I'm asking a lot, but if that would be possible, the board time we've got to digest this thing.
Yes,
it's such an important issue.
We'll do our best. Yep. Is that correct?
We'll do
You
our
happy
best.
with that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yep.
All right, so any further discussion? Any further clarifications? Put the recommendation. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. So 9.2 I think we're up to, which is minutes of the Gladesville Main Street Committee. Moved Councillor Crassoy. Seconded Councillor Collins. Question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Sanderson.
I note in this committee that there are a huge number of apologies, and I think there are some people who are on committees who are not attending at all regularly. In fact, I think there's one person who hasn't attended at all and is on the number of committees. Now, the difficulty that brings is that we, from time to time, I'm fortunate with Public Transport and Traffic Committee, we've always just managed to scrape in getting a quorum, as Councillor Collins would be able to attest. And I think it's important that we do have a code of meeting practice that means these members, will lose or cease to be members of these committees, given that, or at the point where they've been absent for 3 consecutive meetings without notice. And I think that's going to improve the operation of our traffic committees if we go, or all committees if we were to do that. It also gives the opportunity for some fresh blood on those committees if we refill, so that we've got people who are genuinely interested in showing up to meetings and serving the community. We have so many people that have been, done such a great job in that area, and I think we've got to give other people the opportunity. Also, increase the chances of our having quorums in these discussions, and also. Again, fresh blood.
Thank you. Your comments noted and quite right. I'll put the motion. Question?
I'd just like to speak.
Was it a comment or a question?
I'd
Do
actually
you have a
like
question? It'd be good if you had a question.
I've got a question.
No question? Okay, Councillor Crassoy.
What? Me or?
Councillor
When
Crassoy.
Councillor Williams is done.
No, go on. Councillor Crassoy, you got the floor.
I chaired this committee on that day, and I must say that several of the people who were missing were genuine apologies, but I agree
Councillor Sanderson that there's people on several of our committees who are just not turning up, and it takes the spirit out of the meeting when you spend the first 5 minutes waiting and going, "Oh, I saw they're coming, and haven't heard from them, no apologies." So I wholeheartedly agree with that. I'd actually just like to go over a couple of things that came up at the meeting, just for the benefit of the other councillors, if I may. It was a really productive meeting. I really like that we have at least one councillor from Ryde and one of the Ryde staff attend. It's a very productive meeting, particularly in Gladesville. Obviously, one of the big concerns of the residents who are on the committee and some of the businesses is what's happening in the Gladesville precinct. When we assured them that Hunters Hill Council are already in communication with Ryde Council and hoping to get that plan going. Mr. Karepis spoke about our footpath upgrades. There was some push of wanting those to be rushed ahead, but I was up at Gladesville on the weekend for lunch over on the Ryde side of the Victoria Road corner where their beautiful paving has been dug up and terrible asphalt and planks of wood plonked all over them, and the cafe owner said to me it's been like it for months and months and no one's doing anything about it. So I applaud Mr. Karepis and the council works team for their measure on waiting until the construction work's done, until we get our paving down. But I would also raise something that Councillor Williams spoke about at one of our very first council meetings when we formed, is how we work better with Telstra and Ausgrid and those service deliverers for them to do just a better job. It's just sloppy work and it's ruining our streetscapes when we put so much of our small budgets into them. Update from the Chamber of Commerce is really productive because we do have a very vibrant Chamber of Commerce in Gladesville, so it's great that Max McFarlane is now on that committee. We talked about the Airport Master Plan, and Councillor Pedersen from Ryde asked to be included in our work on that, because even though it only touches the edge of their council, they're our neighbouring council and it's a concern for them as well. So the councillors who attend these meetings, they tend to alternate as we seem to. They're very energised about working together with Hunters Hill Council in that Gladesville area. We spoke about our precinct meetings, and Ryde asked if down the track when we settle into whatever shape they may take, whether they might be invited to the bordering precincts such as Baronia Park and Gladesville in future. I assured them that down the track, depending on what the residents want, we might look into something like that. And I would just like to change the motion, if I may, a slight amendment, that the minutes be received and noted, but also that the minutes be summarised into a cheap, simple newsletter for the local businesses and immediate residents in that Gladesville Main Street area. This was something that we raised at the meeting because some of the people attending have asked from the beginning that the residents and the businesses just get more information. They've asked us to set up a community notice board. They've asked us to improve our joint communication platforms. And so we thought perhaps in the interim just a little, not the full minutes necessarily because they can access that online, but a lot of people don't. But if they just kind of get a little joint newsletter or something. So the motion would be that the minutes be received and noted and that the minutes be summarised into a newsletter or e-newsletter to the local businesses and immediate residents.
We'll try to get this correct and you can check it, and if you're happy with the motion as you put it, then we'll go to that.
Yes.
So we'll revert back to this being your original motion, is that correct?
Thank you.
Councillor Williams, comment?
There was a problem we had at the local government conference. I was just wondering if the font size could be increased because my old eyes. Yeah,
They're pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yep, very good.
Just a minor issue.
I thought it was deliberate actually. One of the things, if I might, of committees is people speaking for too long. It's been raised with me about a couple of committees where people are allowed to speak for too long. Now, I understand they've got 3 minutes. Is that right in the committee also?
I'll need to check that, Mr. Mayor.
Because some committees are allowing people to speak for really extended periods and the committee's dragging on for a long time, so it's been raised. I'll have to check. Maybe it doesn't apply to committees, but I think we've got to measure the amount of time.
Did I just go over my 3 minutes?
No, you doesn't. You've got 5 minutes.
Mr.
Councillor
Mayor,
Williams.
while they're typing that in, can I just ask another procedural question? I was just wondering, with these committees, is there a quorum required? Because, like, just looking at this one, there's only 5 people present out of a potential. It's nowhere near half. I was just wondering, is there a quorum requirement for our Main Street?
So there were how many? You think half plus one sort of thing, eh?
Yeah, well, I don't know.
So there were 7 people there.
It comes back to what Councillor Sanderson was saying about attendance. I was just wondering, do we have a quorum requirement with these committees? And if we do, that may again drive the need to have a precedent with who's on these committees.
All right, thank you.
Who's attending.
But we didn't vote or anything, it was more a meeting.
Are there quorum requirements? Just to,
I have to check.
We'll come back to council.
There are.
There are. Okay.
There are, Jim?
There are.
Okay. And what is it, Jim? Is it
A half plus one.
half plus one? All right, we'll just clarify that too for everyone. Any further discussion on this? Anybody? I'll put the motion. It's up here on the board. Is that correct, Councillor Prassler? So this would require an extra news, so the staff prepare a newsletter from the minutes of the meeting and publish that every time there's a meeting. So we would have to do that for the Hunters Hill Main Street Committee too, as well as Gladesville Main Street Committee.
I think particularly in Gladesville, it's crucial at this time when the businesses and residents are so up in the air and feeling so disenfranchised and disappointed because they, of course, look to their councils to resolve all the development issues that are up there for them. So I think it's a really positive opportunity because some really great stuff comes up in these meetings about what the two councils are working on. We motivate each other, we're inspired by some of the things each other are doing. So for the residents, immediate residents and businesses to see that, or, you know, even if it's just focused on the businesses and goes into the general newsletter, but you know, certainly for the next year or so, while Gladesville in particular is still in such a tumult, I think it's a worthy investment.
All right.
Yeah.
Are you happy with it?
Yes. Yep.
You can do that? All right. So I'll put the motion which is up on the board here. Everyone happy with that? Any concerns? Anybody wishing to speak against? Put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks for the suggestion, Councillor. I think you're right. I think we probably don't need to do it for Main Street Committee and Hunters Hill, but Gladesville one would be very beneficial. Yeah, good idea. 9.3. Local Traffic Committee. Councillor Sanderson.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'd like to move the recommendation, but with recommendation C and D removed.
Do you have a seconder for that? Yes. Councillor Williams. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you very much. The first one I'll address is the proposed crossing on Reby Road. As you know, I've probably driven on that road than anyone else on the planet. I've got a large number of concerns with this. At this point in time, there's been no community consultation. The motion doesn't seem to have any prospect of community consultation. The other issue is the impracticality of it. If you're going to, council has gone to the trouble of producing drawings, which would have been at some expense, ahead of what I see as being more urgent priorities. The drawings that I just can't lay my hands on at the moment would have cost council a bit to produce. The other issue with that is they simply will not work. I think you'll acknowledge my expertise in this area. You saw the report that I wrote about the pram ramps, or so-called pram ramps, at the Huntersville Hotel development.
I did.
Similar problems are the case with this one. The path in the concrete part of that corner is 2,450 millimetres wide. When you get to the point where the embankment is, it narrows down to about 1,070 millimetres. That wall has quite an amazing history. I remember it being built by Italian craftsmen as that freeway was developed. in order to achieve what's shown on the drawing, you would actually have to excavate and put retaining walls back into that that part. Then you've got the problems of where it crosses on the other side. Now that's just construction problems. Next set of problems are, it's a huge inconvenience to our residents. It means, and I turn left at that corner so many times, and even when I get home at 7 o'clock at night or thereafter, I invariably have to wait for a pedestrian to cross directly across to Church Street. Now, if this proposal is even to be contemplated, we would need to do consultation from everywhere from Burns Bay Road, I think, down to at least Ferry Street, because there are so many of our residents walk on that across the overpass, across Breby Road to travel home. The other issue is access for people with lesser mobility. There are all sorts of inclinations on there that would make it impossible to get this proposal to comply with access standards. It's therefore unacceptable as an access issue, and as a member of the Access Committee, I would certainly draw their attention to it and suggest that they strongly amend this proposal. It's come from the high school. At the end of the day, they don't pay any rates, so I don't, there's no way in the world that Huddersfield Council should be paying for this if it ever goes ahead. So I just don't see anything positive about this. Other issue mentioned in the report that went to the committee is that it will remove potential parking spots in that area and a significant number, and that with the increased parking pressures in the Huntersville Village is an important parking spot. I regularly go home and all the parking spots all the way down to the avenue are regularly taken. That just puts more pressure on to lose those spots. So I don't think this proposal has a single positive aspect about it. I would reject it out of hand. That's the reason for my accepting this report, or the recommendations A and B, but not C and D. I expect Councillor Williams will speak about recommendation D and his problems with that.
Happy to.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'd like to seek a comment from Mr. Karikas at this point, if I may. These are a set of minutes from this meeting. So, Mr. Karikas.
Through you, Mayor, this proposal, Ruby Road intersection of Church Street, was an initiative by the Huntersville High School with regard to safety and safety of the children crossing the street at that particular point, and that's why the matter was put to the RMS and also to the Traffic Committee for an investigation to ascertain whether or not it's warranted and whether the location of the crossing would be appropriate, and then we look at the costings of it. And that's the intent of this proposal.
Okay. So we've got a mover and a seconder. Do you want to speak further on that?
I just have a question about the
question
thing.
Sure.
Yeah. Because so everything Councillor Sanderson said resonates with me as well. But what we currently have there is nothing, right? Yeah. And so from an access point of view, it's already quite dangerous, yeah? So all I'm just wondering is, because I know that one of the RMS's issues was if we put the crossing at the top, cars are stopping, coming off Burns Bay Road, and they're having to stop. But they're already having to stop there because people already cross there. Mm-hmm. If there has to be a crossing anywhere, it has to be at the top from an access point of view, and people are already using that anyway. It seems incredibly dangerous to put a crossing down the hill on a slope. But anyway, so I mean, and I don't understand how this works, that we've already gone to the extent of doing drawings on this without just chucking it up in the air and asking, for example, one of the councillor who's lived on that street all his life. I just don't quite understand why this is at this. Is it because we were told to do it?
I'll pass it back, if I might just pass back to Mr. Cripps. I was in the meeting and I remember the reason why.
The issue is it's in the current capital works to improve that area, and dovetail into a question by the principal at the time. And there's a safety issue with the children crossing the street. They cross at the top end. We've investigated that ourselves with the RMS and the police, and it's a safety issue. And when the matter went to the committee, they said that it needs to come down at least 15 metres to 20 metres to allow a bus or vehicle to turn to clear the corner to not have an impact on the people on Church Street, the cars on Church Street. So it won't be on that corner, it'll be further down. That's why the draft plans were produced. That's why we took it to the Traffic Committee.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is exactly the issue that I referred to at a previous meeting in terms of the way these committees operate. It seems to be the tail wagging the dog. These issues are put to the committee because somebody put it to council, rather than the councillors filtering what we want to investigate and what we want to do. To me, this is a waste of time, as has been indicated by Councillor Sanderson. It's impractical. None of the residents will want to walk halfway down the street, cross the road, walk all the way back up again, and it's a hill. If there needs to be a pedestrian crossing there, then it needs to be at the top of the street, and whatever protection that's required to control the traffic so that it is safe as a pedestrian crossing should be put in place. Maybe there needs to be a set of lights there. Probably you get a set of lights based on the cost of all this excavation and retaining walls, and I just can't see our community accepting the inconvenience of that when there are other ways of equally achieving a safety outcome for students. And the same issue applies on the other side of the overpass near the hotel. It's exactly the same scenario. So I think this is a bad solution, and the way I think about these things is that rather than just because somebody sends in a letter or somebody wants a line painted on the street or whatever, that the priority should be set by council, not by individual residents. Otherwise you're going to have a lot of money being spent on things that become unproductive. So I do urge council to look at the way these committees operate and make sure that the time they spend is on issues that council is prepared to go forward with. And Councillor Sanderson mentioned item D of this report, and I think that should have never got there, and I believe that it should be totally dismissed as a concept. Why a developer who's making a profit out of a site potentially could inconvenience residents who live there by taking their parking away for 12, 18 months, maybe never getting it back because once it's moved, it might not happen. To me, it is the developer's problem, same as it is for the developer up on Mapledorham's corner. They have to provide a solution to their own deliveries and their own traffic. You don't throw it back on residents who have lived there for a long time and already struggle with parking problems. I just don't understand how this ever got to this point. And again, it's taken time with staff, it's got the residents upset. We've got to think these things through and do them in a much more constructive way. And I look forward to the opportunity, maybe the new General Manager can follow up on that previous motion and the work that the previous General Manager had started on how we structure these committees and how we get business on their agenda in a more structured way rather than higgly-piggly from a whole range of different directions. So I support Councillor Sanderson's motion. C and D should be struck off, and it's not something that Council will consider at the moment.
We're going to refer it back to Mr. Cripps again. How do we deal with items C and D, considering these came out of the committee with various groups involved? How do we deal with those two items? We bring it back to the committee again?
You can. The Review Road, you can, is a safety issue for children. The D, which was the proposal by the proponent to the committee with regard to relocation of the bus stop. The committee itself did not support that, and there was lack of information. So I can add to say that they're not supporting the moving of the bus, and every time we asked for consultation, there was no answer to that by the applicant. So D could be struck off, and it's up to the applicant how they resolve their construction management. But C, you can refer that back to the committee and get an explanation about safety or alternate solution.
So item D says the council requests more detailed plans to be submitted, so that was sort of still in abeyance really.
Yes, this is part of the conditions of consent anyway.
But C, we bring it back to the committee, and perhaps we'll ask you to come back and present on that to the committee, please, Mr. Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Collins.
Can I speak to this? Or?
Please.
I just want to say that we were talking about the pedestrian crossing there, and it is a very difficult problem. But the primary issue is its safety for the children crossing the road. So that needs to be the main part. The issue with having to park a bus, or being able to, that does definitely complicate it. So
and that was about blocking traffic.
Blocking traffic, yeah. So that means it can't be at the top, even though I agree it would probably.
Should be.
Yeah, but then the bus thing would be a bit of an issue. So in any case, there needs to be a count in order to, my understanding is to meet the warrants to do that. So I don't expect that. I would expect if that's done sort of anywhere on that street there that would. I don't necessarily think that everything should slow down because of that. The other thing about this particular committee, I might say is, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's a little bit different from the rest because it's all stakeholder, and it's got professionals on there.
We only have one vote on that committee.
Sorry?
We have one vote on that committee.
Right, yeah, well there you go. And then there's RMS, and then you've got Sydney buses,
police.
So it's police. So it's actually very, it's a very good cross section for these particular things. So whilst I agree that some things have been coming out of committee that probably shouldn't have, or perhaps should have come here, I think that things like this. But again, I don't know the process for actually getting things on this agenda. So perhaps we could potentially look at that, but I do think this seat should be staying, and I just also want to ask, well, this would be a question about B, but that'll be a question, so perhaps we just continue.
Okay, so can I, sorry, go ahead. Finish?
Yeah, finished, yeah.
So if I just summarise, item D is just to gather more information. Item C, I think we can bring it back to the committee again, and Councillor Sanderson, you come on and speak to that at the time. Could we do an inspection of that together as that committee? Go down and have a look at it. That might be a way to help solve the matter, and you can talk about crossovers and other matters too. So, Councillor Williams.
Mr. Mayor, if you're going to have an inspection, then I suggest you inspect the western side of the overpass as well in the hotel, because that's equally problematic for school kids.
Yeah.
I don't accept in D that you're asking for further information, because I don't think it has any merit and is totally out of hand. So why put the residents' view through a process that it still might happen?
I think they're going to take care of.
No, they want to have. The mayor made reference to the fact that need more information on D.
Well, it says the council requests more detailed plans be submitted by the applicant. I think the issue there was an issue of safety, and they were looking at what the safety was in that location. If you're bringing materials to the site and loading and unloading there, and you've got a bus stop there,
yes.
What's the safety issue?
Well, we had bus stops where the hotel was being built.
Sure we
they
did.
Put an awning over the top of it, and the work continued.
I'm
in a
just
much
saying,
more difficult location.
I'm not arguing the point with you. I'm just saying we've just asked for more information
But why?
to understand the safety that relates to that area when things are being loaded.
It's not a safety issue.
It is a safety issue.
Where's it say it's a safety
It was
issue?
discussed as a safety issue in
No,
the
it's
meeting.
not.
Councillor Collins was there.
It was in the meeting. It was discussed
as a safety
It
issue.
is just, if I can, to say, it's just gathering the developer, whether or not it would be accepted, and I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it's a good idea to move the bus stop, and from what I got out of the room, I don't think there was a lot of support for it. But of course, they're entitled to provide that information to us so we can change our minds. But I mean, I certainly wouldn't be inclined to.
We just needed more information to understand it.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why you need information when you've already made the decision you're not going to proceed. If they have to move the bus stop, it should go across the intersection.
I think you've made that point very clear. You can move. Don't move the bus stop. Don't move the bus stop.
Well, you can, but you go to the other, into Ride on the other side of the street where there's a commercial premises.
In that case, we need more information.
No, you don't need more information because it's up to the applicant to put forward an appropriate response.
And that's what we've asked for.
Rejecting this on the basis the residents don't have to worry that this is still going to take place. If he comes back with another proposal, put it in Ride, then that's something he needs to talk to Ride about. But I just don't understand why we put our residents through heartache when there's no need for it if council is not prepared to accept moving it to in front of the residents' properties. There may be safety issues, there may be a whole range of things, but that has nothing to do with the residents. And there are other alternatives that the builder can put in place to achieve his objectives. They do it all over the place. Much more difficult sites than that.
Okay.
So I just don't see why we have to put residents through another step when, as far as I'm concerned, the answer is obvious.
Thank you, Councillor Williams.
I might also add, Mr. Mayor, if I may, while I'm on my feet. Item B, point 1, I find the information in that point 1 and B rather curious, because I attended a meeting with the police and the RMS at that location with a resident, and the police and the RMS made it very clear and stated unequivocally that they did not request those stopping signs. And they were prepared to put that in writing back to the resident. So I think we're getting mixed messages here. And I think the comments of the resident in regards to this should be listened to. And as far as I'm concerned, the authorities don't require those no stopping signs. So why are they there?
Did you have something further to add? I'll refer it to Mr. Creepers, who was actually at the meeting too. So, Mr. Creepers.
Through you, the actual police and the head of the RMS and the RMS contact representative was at the meeting through you, Mayor, and they were concluding with regard to not leaving the signage as it is, and also but altering the 3-ton to incorporate to allow for excluding buses, and that was unanimous, I thought, from the memory from the meeting.
That might have been what they said at the meeting, but they said something totally different on site. They said it was council's choice and responsibility as to whether those signs were there. So it wasn't put to them. There's a difference of opinion between that meeting on site and the meeting at the traffic committee. Because that point's been made very clear by the resident. I don't appreciate bureaucrats telling me one thing and then going and doing something else.
I don't know what the answer to that question is.
We were at the meeting.
Well, we should defer that matter and get some further information on it. Did they say that in the street or didn't they? If they did, why have they now changed?
Who was in the meeting in the street? You were at the meeting in the street?
I was at the resident.
Who else was there?
The resident.
Who's that?
Rory, whatever his name is.
Right.
He
And-
organised it.
Yep, and who else was there?
Police sergeant and 2 people from RMS, who one was the state person and had responsibility for it, and the second person was the local person.
Did you get any minutes from the discussion, or do you know if it was minuted?
Oh, I'm sure. Rory had
had an email that he sent around about that. I don't have minutes, but you're calling me a liar.
No, I'm asking,
The meeting took place.
I'm asking, did anybody minute the meeting?
No, not
Nobody.
that I'm aware of.
Councillor
The
Williams,
RMS were going
Councillor
to
Williams,
send-
I object to your question.
What question?
Accusation.
What accusation?
That the mayor called you a liar.
Who?
You just suggested that the mayor was calling you a liar.
Well,
I asked you, were there a set of minutes from the meeting? Simple question.
I don't have them. There
Right.
may be,
But an email did follow up from a gentleman who lives in that street, is that correct?
as I understood it.
Right? We'll go back and have a look at it. Thank you. Certainly didn't accuse you of being a liar, Councillor.
Well, I do take exception to it.
You mean not calling you a liar, you take exception to, Councillor?
No,
Or-
being called a liar.
Good, and I'm sure you should too. Councillor Sanderson, do you want to say something?
Well, if at the point of a right reply on my motion.
Yes, please.
Where
Go
are we
ahead.
at?
I still have a question, if that's okay.
Yeah,
Question to
Councillor
you
Collins.
first. Can we just get it's about the pedestrian crossing on Mary Street. Can we just get an update and a timeline of where that would be?
Meeting the two schools and the PNF person from Villa Maria and from the school with our traffic engineer and ourselves this week to have an action plan and do some counts and talk about the best approach to and location of the pedestrian crossing.
Fantastic.
And
And
see whether it makes
And
a difference.
we've engaged a traffic engineer with regard to progressing this further.
okay, great. So and presuming that the numbers stack up, and what would be the process? Would it come to here or?
No, it has to come back to here as
Yeah,
well. Yeah.
and then
We have to look for funding and all that sort of stuff and sign off on the design and all that sort of stuff. But I'm assuming the schools will sign off as well and council is happy with all that.
And would it be possible if it did end up going through, on a timeline? Obviously, the best time to do these things would be in school holidays.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Question?
Sort of a question. I'm possibly going to foreshadow an amendment. To the amendment.
Councillor Crasso.
But the sort of question is just following on from what Councillor Williams' point here and the meeting that he raised. I'm just curious from a councillor code of conduct point of view and also for us, because I'm just not sure why no council staff were present at that meeting, if the police and the RMS and a resident and Councillor Williams were at it.
They were. Which one? The one with Councillor Williams in the street?
That an email went around about afterwards. That one.
Are you talking about this meeting or the one Councillor Williams attended?
The one that Councillor Williams is speaking about, that he attended.
And who do you want to ask the question of?
Well, possibly through you to the GM. Were any council staff invited to attend this meeting?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm unaware of the date of that meeting. It was prior. Oh, okay. I've just been advised it's prior to commencement.
Through no council staff were invited. I believe the resident went through the police and the RMS unbeknownst to us. We found out later.
Okay. Thank you. Can I foreshadow?
Councillor Crasso.
Can I foreshadow a possible amendment, or do we need to tidy some other stuff up first?
You said minutes. These are a set of minutes of a meeting.
Recommendations, or
No, I mean, we've got a motion on the table now. If you wish to offer an amendment,
They are the minutes of the meeting.
Councillor Williams, and I would certainly accept it.
so the motion on the table is to accept the minutes scratching C and D. That's the motion on the table.
We've got a set of minutes of a meeting run by this other group. We can't do much about the minutes, but we can ask that certain things be done following this meeting. The minutes are the minutes, but what do you...
No, there's a recommendation. What I'm moving is we accept points A and B of the recommendation, but we reject points C and D of the recommendation.
Okay.
That's the motion.
Right, so your amendment to that is?
Well, the point C, as Councillor Sanderson rightly says, the recommendation is that council endorses the committee's recommendation and agrees in principle to installing a pedestrian crossing subject to ... So I think what Councillor Sanderson's suggesting is that we don't endorse that recommendation.
That's correct.
Yep. So I agree with that. But that's not a case of just scratching the whole thing. It's just the recommendation is that we endorse it, and we don't want to. So, yep. And then D, the temporary relocation of the bus stop. I don't understand why we need, as Councillor Williams says, why we need to go back for more information. So these are recommendations from a committee. We can't change them as such, but they're asking us as council to request more detailed plans, and some of us councillors are suggesting we don't need more detailed plans, we need to reject it. And if they want to come back with another proposal, they can, but right now we want to reject it. So we don't want to ask them, well, some of us are suggesting we don't want to ask them for more information, we just want to reject it.
So I think you're in accordance with Councillor Sanderson's motion. I think that is Councillor Sanderson's motion.
So is it okay to just scratch them out of someone else's minutes?
No,
No, we're not
stay in the
going to
minutes.
the minutes. Their committee is asking
I
us
think we need
to
And
endorse their
want to
recommendations,
accept
and we don't want
A,
it. Like, it's that
go back
simple.
to the committee
And if they want to make changes, they can just come back with other changes at their next meeting.
Yeah. That's right. All right.
Yep.
We-
Sorry, so that turned into more of a
Right.
question than an amendment, and it was answered. Thank you.
I think it's got to cover it. Councillor Sanderson.
Oh, well, it's been a long trip, but I will exercise my right of reply. Look, I think I've said enough to show that you will not be able to put a crossing there that complies with access standards. The other issue that I hadn't mentioned earlier is that the school, I think, wants a fence put around to prevent people from shortcutting and walking across the top of the street anyway. I don't think that's going to work, because just the other night when I happened to be coming home, someone crossed the pedestrian crossing at the end of the overpass, and they didn't even get up on the curb. They just walked straight across Ruby Road. That's still going to happen. This proposal has just got so many flaws. It's inconvenient for our residents. It doesn't meet access standards. If you do make some attempt to comply with access standards, you're going to have to broaden the point where the pram ramps are out to about 2.75 metres, which will involve a degree of excavation. Plus, you would have to meet up with to find Italian craftsmen to put a suitable matching wall in. And, in terms of the safety, I don't believe it's going to make a lot of difference, because at the end of the day, people are still going to walk around the end of the fence one way or the other. There's always been a case that it's kind of like a flaring out point. People walk around that corner. Some people go straight down Church Street. People going to the school or the avenue will go off at 45 degrees. I admit myself, if I'm doing that, I'll probably go at about 5 or 10 degrees. So, and there are major issues. I did have a quick look at it this afternoon. You would need a full-length ramp up there, because the gutters are 200 millimetres high, so therefore the length of your ramp to get anywhere near the compliance. And at the end of the day, there are about 3 different standards for designing those ramps. The most lenient of them is actually the Australian standard, and even if you're corrupted a bit by picking and choosing out of the different standards, you're still going to need 2.75 metres depth to get that ramp in. So look, it just simply isn't going to work. And again, I mean, there's a lot of things that have come from that school. I spent a lot of time, I think I've spent more time than most people in the community involved in saving the place. I get a bit concerned when they come up with proposals like this that I don't think are going to work.
So, Councillor Sanderson, one of the suggestions, can I just check with you, is to ask the committee to come back and review these two issues.
I don't think we need to do that. Well, up to the committee what they do.
and have you presented them?
Well, you go back to them and say council hasn't accepted the recommendation.
We can do that, but perhaps we can suggest a site inspection and then you can present to them as well. What do you think?
Okay, I'm happy to do that.
Councillor Williams.
Mr Mayor, question. Having listened to the debate and listening to the problems at that location, it's a wide road, one way. Can't the street be narrowed down to make it more safe for residents to...
Buses can't get around that corner.
Well, maybe they can. It's a wide street. Instead of them turning hard there, you move it across a couple of metres so that there's a bigger... Anyway, just a thought. There's plenty of solutions, I'm sure.
Okay, so
George, one point of clarification.
Councillor Collins?
The recommendation is actually just agrees in principle to a pedestrian crossing. I'd just ask if at this stage, when there is a process a lot before actually you start constructing things, if it would be okay if that, instead of just completely throwing the idea out, considering it's a safety issue for children, I might just say, can we just maybe, we've got another meeting coming up soon, can go into it more, but perhaps we can continue with the warrants, because it is safety. Kids are just darting across the road, and there could be better solutions, but it would be nice to keep it rolling, because if it does turn out that that's the only option and that's what the council decides, then ultimately these things are best done in the school holidays, end of the year. So,
Mr Mayor, question if I may.
Councillor Williams.
Pertaining to that. My understanding, and maybe I'll be corrected, is that the school has a duty of care to its students. And if they're crossing the road, they should have a teacher there to supervise, is my understanding of the road rules. So if it's a problem at the moment, then the school needs to take immediate action to have a teacher stationed there to ensure its students are safely across that road while the investigation. Maybe that is a better solution in the short term, and also in the longer term. The school needs to take responsibility as well as council.
All right, thank you.
But is that correct?
No.
I'm not sure that they have to have a teacher there to do it, but
I know the answer to that if I can.
Councillor
The
Collins.
duty of care is with council. The duty of care for teachers is not to follow them home and see that they get home safely. That's just not true. So it's our duty of care. We need to come up with a solution because it's a dangerous area for school children.
All right, I wonder if we might just be clear about what your motion is, Councillor Sanderson, and then if there's no further questions, we might put that motion. So,
I'm sorry, I have Councillor Williams' problems. I might be able to read it with you.
You don't want to have my problems, councillors.
Tell me when you want to move up, sorry.
Well, but basically, I'll trust what you put there. But I mean, what the motion was just simply move the recommendations points A and B. So all it is deletion of everything in C and D.
But you don't
I've just struck them through for.
But you don't need to do it on their minutes. It's added as the council's decision.
Yeah. No, it's not their minutes. There's a recommendation here for us. If you look at page 187 up the top, it's recommendation, so that's what they're asking us to move. I've moved that we move the recommendation with C and D deleted.
all right, so just to be, where should we correctly put that? Should we just take out C and D, or should we make a comment that we don't agree with C and D? What's the correct way to do it?
Through you, Mr Mayor, can I suggest if we leave A and B, and then we make a C at this point, just to say that that council through Mr Mayor, hearing what Councillor Collins said about the investigations with the pedestrian crossing, would an option be to have a number 2 under C, so leave 1 A, B, C, D, and then add a point 2 under C that says that In relation to item C, council requests that the traffic committee undertake a site inspection and consider alternatives. So the proposal would be not to discount the work on the pedestrian crossing, but also to leave the door open to look at alternatives and have a site inspection.
Well, if C is simply that the committee, well, council and the committee has a site inspection to consider alternatives.
Council and the committee.
Are you happy with that, councillor?
Yes, councillor.
Is that right?
I respect your expertise in this area, and I think the committee would benefit from you taking them through what you took me through a year ago.
That's why I attended last time.
Yeah, and you spoke. Councillor Crasso, another question?
A question around that change, because already, and this is, I don't object to the idea of the crossing. We have to find a safer way across that road, and I think it's at the top. But we've gone down this path of doing design already, even before council has endorsed the committee's recommendations. So we've already spent money. So I just want to be sure that we don't, if we make this change, that we don't spend any more money on this project until it's gone to the committee and it's been considered and ideas have been chucked around. It's too late, it's already been spent and done?
No. We won't be spending more money.
Okay.
So
you could take out point A, or it's already been done?
No. We've taken out all of it except for recommending a site inspection.
No,
I think
GM's suggesting that it all be left in.
No.
Left in and then added a two.
No, I won't accept that as an amendment. The only amendment I will accept is to make point C a recommendation that the committee, council and the committee does a site inspection to explore alternative options.
So then it's not a 2, it's a 1. It's a
That replaces C.
It's one.
Complete replacement.
C. Yeah.
So this becomes.
all right, let's have Councillor Sanderson. Could you guide us through this, Councillor Sanderson? And if you just speak, then it'll be a little easier.
Yeah. Okay. So everything in C is deleted except for in relation to item C, council and the committee conduct a site inspection to identify alternative options.
Okay.
Question.
Are you happy with that at the moment?
I'm happy with that.
Councillor Williams.
When you refer to the term council there, will councillors be invited or is it just staff?
Okay. You happy to clarify that?
Well, council laws, if you like.
Councillors? Okay. That's the intention. That was the intention.
That's what I'd like to see.
Okay, Wendy?
Is that one?
One point of just, is that going to be at the same time? Because they're held at very different times. The local traffic committees held
I think that
in the
wording
mornings.
has the flexibility to do it whenever we like.
So I don't think they could all go together. Yeah. So might want to.
Do we need to clarify anything?
I think you're right. I think the minutes, the meeting is held, was it 10 o'clock?
10 o'clock, yeah.
11 o'clock during the Wednesday or Thursday, whatever it was.
Yeah. And
So
they all-
is that your intention to?
Well, I mean, I think that's the motion's flexible enough that you'd have one group go with council, another group go with the traffic committee, and I'll be happy to attend both.
Site inspections.
So you want the whole traffic committee to go to it?
Well, whatever they want to do. I mean, if you want to leave that, just leave it to councillors if you like.
Would it be okay if we go into committee of the whole? Because
I
it
think we
seems
are.
like official. I just feel very rude speaking because I've already
All right,
spoken. but
committee of the
it's
whole,
important.
Councillor Collins,
Thank you.
Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you. Look, I think that's.
If there's, is it clear, Councillor Sanderson, is that clear to you? Is that, are you in agreement with this?
You deleted, so you've left the heading.
Oh, sorry, I made a bigger one on this.
Let's see. Yep, that's fine.
And the item D, Councillor Sanderson, what's your intention with item D? Just to
Delete completely.
delete it completely?
Yeah. Council take no further action.
And so the note would be, the council takes no further action. Do you agree to add that in, Councillor Sanderson?
I'd be happy with that. If
Just a
Councillor
note
Williams is
there
happy
that
with
says,
Or that we reject the proposal.
that the council
Sorry, excuse me.
the council take no further action on this particular matter. Is that right, Councillor Sanderson?
it. I'm happy with that. If Councillor Williams is happy with the second, as a second.
I'm quite happy for the word reject, but that's fine. This is
Yeah, check, whatever.
All right, put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried.
Name recorded, please.
Councillor Collins. Thank you, Councillor. 9.4, the minutes of the Hunters Hill Village Main Street Committee. Moved Councillor Crasso, seconded Councillor Williams. Councillor Crasso.
I also did actually want to add to this one, Mr Mayor, that for this meeting we do also a little brief, and just once, and the idea of that is that we want more local businesses on this committee and we want them more engaged with what we're doing. Because unlike Gladesville, Hunters Hill Main Street doesn't have a chamber as such, and we would like more local business engagement and involvement in the problems that we chew over at this meeting.
So you'd like a newsletter for this too?
Yeah, just a one-off.
Yeah.
One-off?
To invite the businesses along and to tell them what happens at our meetings, what we've achieved, etc.
Could I have a question? Towards the back of it on page 192, it talks about the access sign on Gladesville Road near the Heritage Building, no access through the park.
That was a question I asked.
Yes.
Would you like me to?
Yeah, just.
Yep. So
I'm just trying to think. That goes up the driveway to one of the properties. Is that is that it?
So it's the old Hunters Hill Road Community Services building. On the western side of that building, there's a little path that's quite hidden because there's lots of reedy plants. It's lovely. And on the eastern side of that building, there's quite a wide driveway. And to the right of that driveway, a grassy strip within that property that cuts through to Fig Tree Park.
Right.
So one of the issues that comes up at this meeting all the time is parking. And so I just raised the question as a short-term solution because a lot of people now park on Fig Tree, on Ryde Road, why that sign's there and if people could be allowed to traverse through there when they park their car to come and get their loaf of bread. It's kind of
Walk through the property to do it.
Well, it is a property, but it's a really wide driveway that goes through to Fig Tree Park, and it was just kind of a temporary chuck this idea around as because parking's just the big issue there.
All right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So I think Mr. Karipis was going to find out about that signage, probably something to do with the driveway that 3 or 4 cars go down in the morning.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to briefly discuss the landscaping issue on page 190. I'm aware that several years ago a very extensive landscaping plan was developed for this location, and to some extent that has now been implemented. But there's certain elements of that plan that I believe should still be implemented that haven't been. I do recognise that some elements can't be implemented on the advice of underground services, but I still think there are still several more trees that could be planted in that location. I do have a lot of concern about planters. They look fine in the first instance, but they need maintenance and watering. And we've had them in Baronia Park, we've had them in Blaisdell Shopping Centre,
Cow Street.
Cow Street, wherever. But they don't last. They're a lot of expense, and shopkeepers will say they're going to water them and maintain them. Unless council does it as a routine and regular basis, a couple of times a week, then these will very quickly become a bit of an eyesore. So I have concerns about going down that path. I think there's still opportunities to meet the original plan, at least in part. I just don't like the concept of creating an eyesore there, even though this is well intended.
When was the original plan developed? Are you thinking 10 years or?
No, 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Yeah, the former mayor gave me a copy. I think I still got it at home there if you want to.
Great. Well, sure, we'll
But
find it.
it was a fairly costly exercise to develop that plan, and there have been some elements, the sculpture and whatever, that was going to be a water fountain or something. There have been some elements implemented and some trees planted, but I think there's still opportunity to deliver further on that plan.
Okay, thank you.
So I'd like to move an amendment that council revisit the original plan produced 5 years ago, whatever it was, to see what elements of that still can be implemented.
So in the recommendation that we review the original, the recent plan.
Yeah, before we go down the path of planting.
I can speak to that a little, Mr. Mayor. If I can, while I'm speaking, call on Mr. Karipis to help me. I've been on that committee now for, I'd say, 10 years. I was part of the approval of that beautiful plan and I love it. And as you say, for very good reasons, it is impossible to plant trees on that side of the road. We might, due to the services along there, we might be able to get one in, maybe two, higgledy-piggledy, and not enough for it to look elegant along that strip. When the idea of planter boxes came to this last meeting, we threw it around the table because several of the other people at the table have also been in that committee a very long time, including Alistair Sharp. Dr. Sharp has been on many of our committees and he knows a lot about our area. We threw it around the table for quite some time and we looked at the shape and capacity of the planter boxes, and it's one of the reasons I'd like a newsletter to go to the shops about this committee, because we really do need the local businesses more on board. We do want the local businesses more on board, and so with the idea of a newsletter and trying to engage them more, and particularly I know several of the businesses on that side of the road, and I know that they would get on board. We might be able to get some local school kids involved, I don't know, but some planter boxes, as long as we can get them established. And the design of these boxes is quite deep. Is that right, Steve?
That's correct.
And as long as we can get them established, they will potentially live. And if they die, then we'll put another one in down the track. But the other aspect of the planter boxes that we as a committee agreed we really liked was it makes that stretch of footpath, which is currently on the edge of a rat run and a little edgy, it makes it feel a little safer because you've got that block between the pedestrians and the roads in a couple of key places. And for cars going through, it creates more of a sense of, oh, I'm coming into a village here. And so we didn't just like the planter boxes for the ability to have some trees on that side of the road, which we will otherwise not get. We liked them because of that safety element as well, and they're quite elegant and quite large. And as a committee, we agreed, although we had all seen the original plan and we prefer it, but as a committee we agreed that this was a really good alternative, and it has been explored extensively before it was brought to us. So.
All right, so I just need to check. The seconder for your motion was Councillor Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree to the motion as put by Councillor Grasso?
Yes.
Thank you. Any,
The third point, I don't agree needs to be on there. The committee visit that plan regularly and
Right.
have considered it already.
all
and
right,
our
so you like
recommendation-
that last bit, 3 deleted?
Yep.
Councillor Williams.
No, I don't agree. I think there was a lot of investment into that plan. And according to the previous mayor, there's certain elements of it that still can be implemented. And I'd like to revisit it before I dismiss it. Doesn't mean to say you can't have planter boxes, but I'd still like council to revisit it. And so I think item 3 should stay.
Councillor Crassel, would you be happy to have that stay there and
No, I
at
wouldn't.
least for the committee to revisit it?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay.
We do revisit the plan. We're not rejecting the plan. We're just addressing the issue of the trees on that side of the street with planter boxes.
Okay.
The overall plan remains, and in that plan is the issue of the ramps near the pub. And so there are elements that haven't been addressed yet. So if what you'd like is that the council and committee look at the plan again, that's fine, but I don't think it should interfere with the proceeding of these planter boxes because they have been considered within that design.
Very good.
Mr. Mayor, can I do an amendment on the basis of what Councillor Crassel has just mentioned? Can we have a,
I need to just, can I see if there's a second for Councillor Crassel is first?
Oh.
There's a second for Councillor Crassel. Councillor Williams.
I'd like to put an amendment. Is 3's gone now, is it? Before you strike it out, I'd like to suggest 2 more points there. One is that that council revisit the previous prepared landscaping plan.
And what you've already got.
Yeah.
Sorry.
3.
Yes. To implement outstanding, to ensure the plan where possible is completed.
Sorry, just give us a minute. Sorry.
It's our first time.
That's all right.
I think it's great.
You're doing well. The conference down in Albury, they vote as quick as you guys.
Revisit the previously prepared landscape plan to, just get rid of.
All right, get rid of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
To,
So I want to break it into two elements. One, that we revisit the previous plan to see what else we can still implement. And secondly, proceed with the planter boxes.
Well, we don't need to put that because
Well,
that's
I've
already.
done it. Okay, so there's only one dot point 3.
deliver, implement it,
Identify the components that can still be
so
implemented,
that can still be,
excepting those parts that can't.
and delete the rest, 4, 5 and 6.
Okay, so that's your amendment. Seconder for the amendment. Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Williams, do you wish to speak further on?
Oh, just that, as I've said before, there's a lot of money being spent on it. There may be still opportunity to make use of it. And as I believe from the advice I've had, that there are some useful parts that could still be implemented. It doesn't have any impact at all on, as Councillor Pressoy says, to proceed with the planter boxes. Although I think they're fraught with danger in terms of getting commitment to maintain them. But it's worth a try. But I still think we shouldn't just leave unfinished business. We need to make sure that we make as much use as we can.
Right. Thank you, Councillor. So the amendment is that we revisit the previously prepared landscape plan to identify components that can still be implemented.
Yeah.
That's the only amendment. Right. Anybody wishing to speak against that amendment? Councillor Crasso.
And the reason I'd like to speak against it is because, Councillor Williams, as you say, we have our committees and they have their jobs that they're meant to do, and some committees have been acting outside of their roles, it's true, but our committee is regularly reported to by council officers on the progress of that, and it wasn't just called a landscape plan, it was like a master plan for that area, wasn't it? So as far as I'm concerned, as the chair of that committee and as a councillor, our council staff are doing a good job of delivering what they can from that plan with the budget they have and in collaboration with the RMS on a couple of occasions, and they're keeping us regularly up to date. That committee is being kept up to date with what happens on that plan. I think too many of our motions are too wordy and complicated. This is already being done. It doesn't need to be on there because the suggestion of revisit implies that it's been shelved and it hasn't been. It's raised at every meeting. Would that be correct, Mr. Kripis? Yeah.
Correct.
And everyone on that committee is aware of it. And in all of our discussions, it's what guides us. So I think it's too wordy, and I think it a little bit insults the good job that the council officers are already doing on this plan, and that the committee are doing in endorsing it and supporting them to do their job, which is what the committee's for.
If I may make a comment, I got a feeling you're saying the same thing.
No, I don't think we need to revisit it.
I think if I might just clarify this for me, you're saying that you do this already.
And
this
it
is a
doesn't
part
need
of
to be
your
in the
normal
motion.
process.
Yeah.
Councillor Williams is saying that he thinks we should do this. You're saying we're already doing this.
And that's why it doesn't need to be in the motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Councillor Williams.
I think it's fair for council laws to be able to get on top of the issues. And I haven't had the chance to look at that plan and revisit it. Okay, the committee does it, but I'm a councillor making the decisions on behalf of the community. I want to have some information to let me be confident about the decisions I'm making. I'm not having any aspersions on anybody. I'm just saying, as a councillor, there is a plan, costs a lot of money. I understand there's unfinished business. I'd like to have that clarified. I'd like to see the plan, see the reasons why certain elements can't be done.
Is there a clarification in this, same as the previous motion, where it's actually council laws, not council?
Yeah, that's right.
Council laws?
Yeah, yeah.
So that moves
fine.
it a little bit differently. So the committee's working on the plan. Councillor Williams is suggesting the councillors get a chance to look at that.
Well, can we take the word revisit out, that councillors would like to see the plan? But can I just ask a question on that? Aren't councillors welcome to come to any committee meeting they'd like to attend so that they can get up to speed on these things? And
Yes, certainly. But this, after the meetings, that comes back to council. Always comes back to council.
A question? Perhaps
Question.
we just send
Councillor
around
Collins.
a copy of the plan. I mean, does it need to be in the minutes? It's just send. If you want to see the plan, it's available to all of us, isn't it?
We can be circulated.
Right? Send it around.
Yeah,
It can
I'm
be
looking
circulated.
for more than
Revisit
just
it
the plan.
tomorrow.
I'm looking
That's
for
right.
the rationale as to why
Yeah.
certain elements can't be.
Yeah, so we can circulate the plan, but what Councillor Williams is saying, let me be careful what I don't say something wrong here.
That's right.
He would like us to make the decision on this at the end. He would like us to be familiar with the plan and be in a position to make a sensible decision. It comes back to council for decision.
what decision?
How we use the plan, recommendation of the committee, come back to council laws in a council meeting to review. So the committee can review something and make recommendations, but it still comes back to us as a body to make the decisions.
I have to ask a question.
Committee
I'm sorry.
doesn't make the decision.
I'm not asking for the committee to make a decision, but I do need to ask a question because as I understood it,
That plan was already endorsed by council, and as funds become available and as opportunities to work with other departments becomes available, council is continuing to do it. So perhaps what Councillor Williams is looking for is more of a workshop or an update or presentation on that. I still don't love the idea revisit. It implies that it's gone off the burner and it hasn't.
I'm happy
And I don't think that council makes decisions on what gets implemented as such, because I think that's council's job, as in the council.
I'm happy to move.
We've already endorsed.
Councillor Williams, how would you like to change this?
I'd like to remove the two letters RE in revisit and just councillors visit the previous.
in a workshop, because it doesn't need to come to council.
Okay, so that's the amendment. I'll put the amendment. Those in favour? Against? That's Doesn't pass. So back to the original.
Sorry, I'll just go there a bit, sorry.
We could do
Fix up the
another
format.
screen here.
Yeah, we could.
An extra screen. Okay. Is that correct?
I'd like
Councillor
to
Cresswell?
make an amendment if I can, Mr.
Well, it's your motion.
So can I?
Yeah.
Thank you. Point 3, that councillors be given the opportunity to look at the plan and its rollout at a future councillor forum
Very good.
for their information.
So you're the seconder, agreed with the seconder. Do we need any further discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. And I think that solves the problem. Thank you, Councillor Cresswell. Uh, 9.5, the minutes of the Public Transport and Traffic Advisory Committee, October 9. Moved Councillor Collins, seconded Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Collins.
Well, I don't particularly want to speak to it, but I do have a question just about the item 3.2, which is the parking. The
Boat trailers.
The boat trailers. What's the process from here on that?
Through you, Mayor, it's a lengthy process, but we'll come back to you if this gets through.
Yes.
We'll come back to you with the program and what needs to be achieved and a timeline. There's a bit of consultation involved as well. We'll also need to go through the Department of Local Government, get an approval from them as well, and then we'll follow through the whole process to start.
Okay, cool.
So there were some pilot projects running. Have they been concluded?
They haven't been, from my understanding, they haven't been concluded. Well, ours and Canada Bay's from memory. The issue there is, the issues there are, the distance away, how often, and the distance away from a corner or a street. That's what they're piloting at the moment. One argument is, or one proposal is that the trailer has to move within 28 days from a particular street or park from a X amount of distance away from the corner. How do you patrol it? How do you monitor it and stuff like that? So these are the things we need to look at, and we'll come back to you with a full. It's the start.
Cool. Okay.
Do we need any further discussion on this? I think we're going to find this problem all over the municipality, actually. Any further discussion? Councillor Williams.
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor. Unless we take this action and other councils are doing a similar thing, then we'll become a dumping ground for boats that people don't want in front of their houses. So I think it's important that we take this step and start the process.
Thank you. Okay, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. 9.6, councillor briefings. Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Williams. Yes. Councillor Crasso, rather. Councillor Williams, did you want to speak to this?
No, Mr. Mayor, it's given me adequate information to share with you.
Oh, thank you. I wonder if we might pass a vote of thanks to Bob Hayes for his presentation.
Move that one.
Councillor, I think we got Councillor Williams, Councillor Crassoy on this one. So those in favour? Against? That's carried. Sorry?
Sorry, the councillor Hayes.
Councillor Williams.
In that, thank you to Mr Hayes. I'd also add his long-term commitment and support of Hunters Hill in this matter. It's not only that forum, but he's been doing this job now for
Fighting
20
battle for
odd
this,
years,
yeah.
30 years. So
Okay.
just a broad thank you.
Thank you for his presentation.
This ongoing contribution to this matter.
Need the screen. Hook the screen to this slave screen. All right, is that clear? Councillor Williams, Councillor Crassoy, all in favour? It's carried. Thank you. The last one is 10.1, correspondence from the Honourable Bridget McKenzie. Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Crassoy. Thank you. Any discussion needed on this, Councillor Williams? I put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Do we have any further business this evening? Do you have any questions without notice?
Yes, Mr.
Thank you, councillors. Would you like to discuss something?
I would.
Councillor Williams.
My question is regarding the proposed marina on Parramatta River at Gladesville Bridge. And that is that this is proposed, there is a proposed expansion of the Gladesville Bridge marina, and it will be highly visible from Hunters Hill local government area and will alienate a significant area of the public waterway. Has council considered the impacts, and is it preparing a response raising these concerns? There is information available about the extent of this and its close proximity to Hunters Hill, and I was just wondering, is council going to provide a submission or a report back to council as to its potential impact?
General Manager.
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, we'll be preparing a submission back and we'll provide that to the council and seek your input.
And is it legitimate for council to
Yeah, I think so.
comment on that?
Yeah.
Because it's something that impacts and the other one that I'd like to bring to attention of the council, rather than just have it in the minutes, is the Parramatta River Catchment Group Master Plan was launched the other day. And I won't read it all out, but it would be a good suggestion to have the coordinator, Sarah, come along and address council at one of its briefing sessions.
Good.
And council was presented with an excellence award as part of the process, which I'll also hand up to council.
Good. Thank you. I think that's a good suggestion.
The rest I'll just hand up.
I think we can do that. It's a good suggestion. Thank you. Any further business we need to discuss tonight? Meeting closed 10 p.m. Thank you very much.